All right, guys, this is Lauren Lando doing a roundtable discussion today as a podcast with a good friend of mine, John Hofman. John his role is strength and conditioning coach for the Sacramento Fire Department. So John and I go way back. We see each other at conferences, and John is a sharp practitioner who has a vast amount of experience as an athlete, as a strength and conditioning coach, but now has kind of found his niche more on the tactical side and really preventative natures, but also in helping these practitioners, these firefighters, withstand the front lines, how to be healthy, how to prepare for really what their job is, and I got to believe their job is chaos at a moment's notice. So, John, thank you for joining us today. Why don't you give our viewers just a little idea of who you are and what you've done to get to this point where you are today?
Well, thanks for having me, Lauren. This is a great honor and a privilege to be speaking here. Basically, it's quite simple. I mean, I'm just like any other strength and conditioning coach, but specifically, more importantly, for the firefighters and the tactical side. The way I got here was just like any other coach, I think. I started off as an athlete in college setting. I progressed on to being a member of the U.S. kayaking team, sprint flat water kayaking. And then over the time, I started off as personal training, getting my master's degree, and evolving, working at Velocity Sports Center, and obtaining, great certifications, CSCS from the NSCA to USAW to USA Track and Field. And just like any other progression, I went from athletes, and one day I saw an application for a fire department strength and conditioning coach, really. And I was like, wow, that's quite interesting. So 9 years ago, I applied for it, and here I am.
Wow, that's really a cool journey, and I think that, as a testament to really the different directions that we can go in this field, right?
This field of tactical population is probably going to be the new frontier. There's only so many athletes and so many high school athletes, college athletes that we can really train. The new frontier is going to be the tactical field, because these individuals, the military, the cops, the law enforcement, the fire, I mean, they really need this help. More so than I think I've ever worked with anybody before.
Right. And you have such a vast age difference. You have such a vast training age difference that I'm sure it makes your job, obviously, like anything, it's that kind of working evolution.
There's never a dull day. I will say that I get challenged every single day with something different. For example, yesterday a firefighter came in with surfer myopathy. I've never heard of it. I had to call and make some contacts, ask people, some physical therapists and specialists if they've ever heard of this. And then I had to sit down to tell the individual to go to his doctor because he didn't want to. And I'm like, you're going to need the surgery or you're going to be paralyzed. And all of this came down within an hour. So I had to get my network and basically put everything aside and meet with this young individual because he was being, I guess, stubborn, if you want to say, and convince him that this was the best action for him.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. You would have called me up on that one. I said, I have no clue what you're talking about. So here's what I want to do before we get too far into what your day-to-day is. Let's talk to me a little bit. When we were at the NSCA TSAC conference, you and I had a long breakfast, and you told me things I had no clue about you as an athlete. Obviously, you went the typical route. You're a big guy. You played football. I'm sure linebacker, running back. What happened after that?
Oh, after that, everything changed for myself. Sitting around and hanging out with your friends. I guess you could say they challenged me in the sense that they said I wasn't good enough athlete to be an Olympic athlete. And that's when I decided to wake up and change my entire life around. I guess you could say I was a little mad. That's the way people perceived me as. And looking back, I really was a lazy individual who just got by. So I decided to commit myself and go out and buy a book on sports psychology, Terry Orlick and the Pursuit of Excellence, which changed everything about how I go about things now. This is probably just at the infancy of the internet. So before that, I just said, I'm going to the Olympics, and I just started to apply myself in everything I did, from football to schooling. And one day, lo and behold, here I am. In 1998, I'm graduating college, and my family said, what would you like for your graduation present? And I said, a kayak. And that's pretty much how it all started. My father was from Croatia, and he kayaked as well. And I thought, how hard could it be to go to the Olympics in kayaking? Not realizing it's the second hardest sport in the Olympics.
Wow.
And it was a very humbling experience for myself personally. I was determined. Yes, people laughed and made fun of me, including my own friends. But over time, with perseverance and dedication and believing in yourself, it was amazing. All of a sudden, one day, you get invited to the Olympic Training Center, and you literally are like being introduced as an individual who's training for the Olympics. And it was eye-opening. But I try to tell my recruits here at the Fire Academy, you got to be humble if you want to be great. There's no other way.
Well, speaking of that point, you have to be humble. You told me a specific story, and that story, you went to go work with a kayak coach who was world-renowned. And tell me what happened in that first workout.
Well, when I went to Canada to train with the Canadians, I went up there, and the Canadians are fairly good at the sport of sprint kayaking, and the coach goes, do you think you're strong? And I said, of course I think I'm strong. You know, I played college football. So he puts me on the bench press, and he tells me to do 225, and I did it like 12, 13 times, and I'm all proud of myself. Lo and behold, he says, Sarah, come on over here. And this young lady comes over, and he says, bench press. And she gets down and does it like 12, 13 times, and my jaw hit the ground. Now he looks at me, and he goes, you do pull-ups, huh? The big Polish gentleman. And I said, yeah, I do pull-ups now. I'm a little more humble.
Yeah.
And I did my 10, I think, like every other individual does. And he says, Sarah, come over here and do these pull-ups. And she straps down two 45-pound plates and starts doing pull-ups. And he looks at me and he goes, you're not strong. You're going to train with the women's team. And I was like, I just flew 3,000 miles, moved my entire life to train with the girls' team. I can't compete against the women in the Olympics. And he goes, you're lucky I don't put you with the kids. You're so bad.
Wow. So
And,
then how was it once you got into the water?
What's that?
How was it once you got into the water then?
You know, I mean, if you have to take a step back and you say, hey, this is what I have to do to make myself better. This is what I have to do. And looking back, it was the smartest thing for me at that time, because literally if I trained with the men's team and I was only kayaking for a year or two, that I literally would have never been able to master the technique. I would have gotten crushed every single day, and it would have been about survival. And training with the women's actually allowed me to master my craft, my technique, and focus a little bit. And then obviously over time I was able to, go faster and then join the men's team. But I mean, you had to take that progression. You had to take the step back and literally go, this is what it's going to take to make me better, so be it.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. You had to take the steps back to master your craft. And I think that is probably the one sticking point that I think most athletes do is they think they have the I got it syndrome. And so they just want the more advanced exercises, more weight, more this. And they haven't even mastered, these specific motor skills. So to me, that was one of the most intriguing things when you and I sat down and had that conversation. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I'm sure we could go on for another couple hours on just your workouts with Sarah. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so let's get to your job. Talk to me about the day in the life of John Hofman. Show me what you have, what you have on a typical day.
It starts at 4 a.m. Basically, I get up and I show up at the academy at 5:30 a.m. getting ready for all my rehab guys or guys coming on duty. So they'll come in and work out, in a fitness setting, or maybe some guys have some little aches and pains that they want to take care of before they go on shift. That'll go from basically 6 to 7. Then we'll actually transition from 7 to 8:30 with the actual recruit academy training. After that's done, then we'll go on from about 8 to 9 to 10, where I actually have an eclectic group where maybe it's somebody on light duty. These are my light duty guys who are already injured. I help complement whatever they're doing with the physical therapists, and I will try to give them some other means of training to get them rehabbed faster. So that goes from 7 to 10. Then it just kind of goes any which way. Maybe it's a meeting. Like today we had a meeting on purchasing new treadmills. We're getting the curves, non-motorized treadmills. From scheduling the wellness screenings where I oversee our actual blood draws and scheduling all our firefighters for cancers and inflammatory markers. Sometimes it's dealing with burn patients. Some of our firefighters have been burned, so we sit down and I'll talk with them, see how they're doing mentally and keeping their spirits high. After about 11 o'clock, it can go any which way, but usually the day doesn't stop till about 5 p.m.
Wow, that's a full day. Let me ask you this. What type of screen will you put through with your athletes, through your firefighters? Do you have a set screen for, obviously you have your younger recruits who are coming up, then you have some guys who've probably been, in the line of duty for 20, 25 years. How do you change your screening process or manipulate it, or do you, based on those variables?
I mean, if you're talking about movement screenings and assessments and such like that, I try to be very simple. I'm a big fan of Stuart McGill, Dr. McGill, and I think that each person's a little different. I understand the stressors of the job and what it puts on my firefighters. I'm well ingrained and very in tune with that. But I'm a little more holistic, whereas I want to see how they walk. Tell me where you do. Tell me what side of the engine you sit on. How long have you been in a firefighter position? Have you been a captain? Are you a medic? Do you transport? How do you sleep at night? Do you coach Little League outside of out of work? Do you coach, other sports? I try to take as much possible information, not only what I see with my eyes, but what they tell me, and try to develop a plan that's best for them. And that's really how I go about it. I really try to start with a flat piece of paper and start asking a million questions and watch.
I love that. That's that blank canvas. We're taking this individualized approach. And to your point, we have to ask all these questions because we don't know what they do outside of here. I mean, asking the question about, do you coach Little League? What side of the engine? I mean, those are unbelievable questions. I'm sure a lot of people, it just goes right over their head to even think about. They just think about what's in front of them right there and then. That's fantastic. Now, with that, do you notice a little more apprehension in some folks in getting indoctrinated into more of a strength and conditioning program? Maybe they haven't been doing it. Maybe they haven't done it the majority of their career. Do you have a little pushback at that, or is there pretty easy buy-in?
For myself personally, and this I think had to come with time and respect, I had to earn their trust. Now it's like, Coach, fix me. What do I need? And if I said this, they'll do it. Years ago, they wouldn't have trusted me if I told them to just jump up and down, and that's if it would have fixed them. It wasn't going to work. I had to get indoctrinated into the culture. I had to get them to embrace me. Now it's come to the point where it's like it's gone past me trying to convince them. Now I actually find myself as a coach of softening my tone and being more understanding, which allows me to ask more personal questions, even as far as what side of the bed do you sleep on, and how is your relationship with your family, so we can make a better rehabilitation program, really, because that plays a big role in it.
Absolutely. Let's talk about everything that people are talking about these days on the recovery side of training, and we talk about sleep cycles and how important it is. This is a population that probably misses out on a lot of sleep patterns. Is that pretty much so, or do you have different strategies within the day where they can do different meditation, different relaxation to get into some of those parasympathetic states that they may otherwise run into such a high red line approach all the time?
That's a great question. I mean, sleep is probably the biggest killer of all firefighters. It's the biggest problem that we have. And the way I approach it is I can't change the call volume. Sacramento is one of the busiest west of the Mississippi. Our guys get crushed. They may get 50 calls in a shift. And I can't change that. I can't shut off the tones. I can't do that. But what I do try to do is look at it. How can we correct these things when they're off duty? Educating them on maybe getting sleep. The most important thing I've realized over research and years of experience is that they must establish a routine, especially outside of work. I want them to keep a routine. If you get off duty, go home and take a nap. There's a place for fitness, but when we say health and wellness, sleep is just as important as working out. So we don't, we educate them, and it's taken years to do, but it's kind of ingrained in the culture that working out to exhaustion on duty is stupid. It's just not needed, because what happens when that call comes in? When I first got here, guys love to do high-intensity power training and go crazy, and I'm like, that makes no sense to me. And over the years, we were able to educate them, saying, you know what, when you're on duty, maybe get a nap, or maybe go easy on the workout, and then when you go home, get better rest, and you can go harder.
You bring up a really good point right there. Routine is huge. Scheduling is huge. And one thing that I firmly believe with my athletes is the more you actually schedule, the more flexibility you have. Instead of randomly looking at the day, if you have things dialed into a schedule, you have more flexibility to do those things, schedule in a nap or whatever it is you may want to do. And the other thing you brought up was maybe on shift, maybe use that time to take a nap and not push the high intensity workouts. To me, I've got to think that programming for you is almost like in season for a football coach. Like it's kind of this maintenance thing when they're in the station, I'm sure, where let's just do enough, let's get through our correctives, let's get through, different, stability-based exercises, but I need you to be able to flip the switch and go when your life is on the line.
Programming has been probably the most difficult thing ever within the fire service. The only place you have control is in the academy, and that's really where you're going to build a periodized program that you can control all variables. Outside of that, I actually take a different approach. I was beating myself to death, and yeah, you put the world's greatest program together for the firefighter, and you tell them it's perfect. But you realize, they have training, they have downtime, they need a nap, they have house chores, they have things to do outside of work when they go home, they have they don't have 3 hours to train. You're lucky. So it really became like, where are they at their career? What's the main issue? Are you working out? And they're like, yeah, I like to run, coach. Well, good, do it then. I love it because running works, okay? Don't preach to me that everybody needs to sprint because it's the greatest thing, because you know what? Long, slow distance running has its place for my guys to reduce stress and clear their mind mentally. So, that's where people start getting caught up in what's the best. And I'm like, it all works.
Yeah.
I just need to first encourage them to exercise. If they like it, they make it a priority. Then we'll correct if they have pain. Then we'll change some workouts and maybe prescribe a different exercise here or two. But most importantly, just make it a priority.
Awesome points. Thank you so much on that. So can you talk to me a little bit about the type of training for the academy when these young recruits are coming in?
Yeah, that's a very important thing. A lot of times what we found is people always want to do high power intensity training, and what they don't realize is that they usually come broken. And now you're holding the lotto ticket. You've gotten a job that 3,000 other people want, and you come in with broken shoulders, with a high volume of training, and you're really stick thin. You got six-pack abs. I prefer that you don't do that, because I prefer that you have a little weight. You'll have a little more energy to sustain 10-hour days out on the drill ground wearing 85 pounds of gear. Fat's a good energy source. Our guys who are coming in ripped, shredded, they struggle really hard, especially here in Sacramento with the heat. And more importantly, I need them strong. I'd rather you come in here and be strong versus, I can do certain workouts really, really fast, because I can build conditioning easier in the academy just by the nature of the beast. Spending 10 hours a day on a drill ground, throwing ladders, wearing 85 pounds of gear in the heat is natural conditioning. So if you're strong, you can maintain that posture, that load, and handle that stuff and reduce the injuries. The problem, what we often see back in the day, a few years ago, was that guys were just coming in just so weak that they couldn't handle it. And once you start to hurt in a fire academy, there's no fixing it. There's no time to pull them out. You'll miss skill time. You'll miss training time. And basically, you have now just washed out because you wanted to prove to yourself that you could, go crazy on a workout in the gym prior to coming. I believe you have to be strong, very strong.
Awesome. Love it. I love it. It's just like preparing for sports. You've got to be strong. And then, ultimately it comes down to the SAID principle. Specific adaptations to the imposed demands, just like you talked about, being in the field 10 hours with 85 pounds of gear. You're not going to be prepared for that. And so ultimately you've got to be strong enough to tolerate that stress, to allow the body to adapt to the new stress.
Absolutely.
Boom. Love it. Okay, so talk to me. Earlier you talked about having your network. You had your network with the person who you had to refer out to the physical therapist and then to the doctor. I've got to believe that nutrition plays a massive role. Do you take care of that part yourself, or do you refer that out to someone on your team?
That's a great one. It's kind of unique. I studied, I got my precision nutrition certificate. I believe they have a pretty good approach. I try to stay educated in the nutrition world. I take bits and pieces. We don't try to, I'm not curing disease by any means with nutrition. First, we try to give them simple strategies. If we're looking at someone with high blood glucose, type 2 diabetes, pre-type 2, based on their blood work. Maybe we'll prescribe a low-carb diet, high protein. If we start to see heart disease, maybe we'll go with a more plant-based diet. And we try to keep it simple for these guys at first. If we do see a serious issue, such as morbidly obese or something like that, I have referred out, and I have a certain network of individuals. I have a network of professionals who actually deal with eating disorders, and I can refer them out too. It's for my job. It's very important. You have 800 firefighters that you need a network of individuals to be able to just point them in the right direction to go here. They trust you to come to you for help, and your job is now to give them the right help.
Awesome. So as we're talking about the nutrition side, and I'm thinking about, these firefighters who are fighting these big fires in the summertime, they're out for how many hours at a call? Do you have any type of hydration protocol? I can only imagine how much they sweat in the suits. Will they weigh before and post shift, and then from there have some hydration strategies?
Not really. I mean, usually it's urine, but you know what? We try to go home again because everybody's tried all these different strategies. We've done hydration studies here with Sac State University, and other studies have actually shown that in a wildland setting, they'll never be able to keep up with the water intake. So what we try to do is, first of all, and this sounds crazy, is stay away from the energy drinks. You wouldn't believe it, but guys are hopping in caffeine to keep them going. The other one is we try to actually tell them to limit their sugar intake, but rather if they give the Gatorades out, we tell them to mix it half and half, which sustains their energy, increases their hydration process quicker, and keeps them in the game. I don't want them just dumping in, pure sugar water into their system because it's going to take longer to hydrate. So we go with education. Within the academy setting, same thing, because it'll get to 105 here, and we make sure that they actually have an optimal amount of sodium, so we actually tell them it's required to put a pinch of salt in their water.
Awesome. Those are great strategies. So, John, let me ask you this. Obviously, we always talk about athlete development, and it takes a village. I want to know who is in your village. Who were the mentors that you had? Who are the people that you seek out to learn from, to reach out to? I'd like to hear.
Oh, that's a great one. Probably the most influential coach on me was Rob I met Rob through the NSCA years ago. He was at that time the executive director of the TSAC program, and I was just starting out and said, "Hey, do you need help?" And he was like, "Sure." And I was like, "Tell me what you need." We built a very good professional and personal relationship, and he was very forthcoming in sharing his knowledge with me. Mark Rusin has been another great friend and professional colleague. Tyler Christensen from the NSCA now, who was the executive director of the TSAC. Another one I can advance. Mick Sterley from Australia, the New South Wales Police. My old boss, Victor Hall, who works for Exos now. Victor was probably one of the most influential coaches on my life when I first started out, and he's younger than me. And he taught me the importance of coaching cues and regressions and progressions, and it was just phenomenal. I was very fortunate to have these individuals around me. Joel Rather's another one.
That's an awesome list. Awesome list of coaches. It's so funny because it's just the commonalities, right, within the network of people who have done the performance from TSAC all the way through to the performance levels of athletes. All those coaches right there check all the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I like to say that I may be the dumbest person in the world, but I'm surrounded by smart people because I know where to go get the answer.
Absolutely. I told somebody the other day, I said, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. Well, hey, a couple more questions for you. I can't thank you enough for your time, but a couple good books that you've read lately, whether they're field-related or not. Something maybe for our viewers to maybe pick up and take some ideas from.
Well, I think there are probably some cliches. It Starts with Why. That was a really good book. One I just finished was actually Transcendence, and it was about transcendental meditation and the benefits it has. It's something I'm trying to learn more about to help encourage my firefighters, especially one of my burn victims. We're helping him practice to meditate a little bit to help overcome some of his post-traumatic stress. So it's something that I don't know a lot about, and I just read it, and it was very interesting for myself as well as practical. I just started this week Beyond Stephen Jobs. I've always been a fan of Stephen Jobs, but I think a lot of people misunderstand him. They don't really truly know who he was. Back in college, I used to read a lot of books on Apple and Microsoft. I was fascinated as an econ major, and I just started reading this book, and it really exposes who he was as a person, especially as a leader and an innovator. It really shows you how he learned from his past mistakes, which led to his greatness, which I think is important for all great coaches, where it's okay to make an error, just so long as you correct that error as you grow.
That's a great point. You know, too many times coaches have such an ego that they won't mention when they've made a mistake. They don't have the humility to sit there and say, you know what, I was wrong in this case, or, you know, something I was doing for years maybe isn't the best practices approach. And so that's cool that a book like that kind of enlightens that and shows that. Here's somebody who was a pioneer and innovator who can sit there and say, look, I screwed up. But you only screw up if you take risks, in my opinion. However, if you keep screwing up, you didn't fix the problem.
Yeah, and I like to see as great coaches or great leaders or innovators, you know, what I'm really intrigued and always have been of what really got you there. You know, what was it? And of course, there's a little risk involved, maybe a calculated risk. Sometimes it's a gut feeling. You know, and that's what I really think coaching. I have my interns now, and I'm like, coaching is an art. I don't really want to say it's a science. You take science, but sometimes it's a gut feeling, and I don't have research to back it up. But like Charlie Weingraf once said, if it works, who am I to judge it?
Perfect. Perfect. Well put. I think that's a great exclamation point on this interview, man. John, I can't thank you enough for your time, your expertise, and just you sharing some of your stories with us. It's super valuable information that I know our viewers are going to love. So thank you so much.
Lauren, thank you for having me. Keep up the great work, guy. I mean, you're doing some great stuff out there, and as always, you're a great friend and very, very great coach.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Thank you.